I guess, yeah, because you were there. And I think my impressions of the match, I do like when we have these where you're there and I was here. And by here, I mean in my studio, you're thousands and thousands of miles away. So my perceptions of matches and the match and performances and things might be very different from yours. So I actually want to give you the floor on, I mean, we have to start with Pedri no matter what. So I was going to say, what do you want to start with? But I think we have to start with Pedri in the goal. I think that's the appropriate place to begin, right?
It's nice. Pedri's goal is like the goal against Galatasaray, but from outside the box.
Can you believe that he scored 4 goals this season? That was just his 4th goal. Like, it feels like all of them were Golazos. All of them were important. All of those were significant goals. They were all match winners. And so it feels like he scored more than 4, but that was just his 4th goal of the season, 2nd in the league.
Like, walking home, I was trying to count them. Are we counting the goal that was given to Alba?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so because for me that was Pedri's goal, so that's 5 goals in half a season, and I think we were talking about what he added the last time that I was on the show, and we were talking about how he added long balls, but he's also added long distance shooting, and wow, it's just amazing.
Well, in here in the U.S., the ESPN commentator Derek Ray, and on the show, when you and I have talked about before, I've been pretty critical of some of those that ESPN Plus have put out this year. But Derek Ray is a pro; he's awesome. Just like Ian Dark, on the back of World Cups. Me growing up and hearing from World Cup matches and everything on ESPN. But he said in the goal call that it was worth the wait, and that's the title of this podcast. And I think that's what it was. That when I looked at this match, I think worth the wait is how I sum it up. And that Pedri goal in particular was worth the wait. I think Barcelona were building to that goal, obviously, of course, but everything for Barca was all down that right flank. Everything was a switch. I mean, it has been over the last few months. It's whether it's Adama, whether it's Dembele, get the ball, switch the ball over to the right, let them go one-on-one. Once that second help comes, you cross in. And we'll talk about Dembele later, but in particular for Pedri, going back to his goal, why that is significant is because for the one time that I think Rakitic especially was prepared for Pedri to switch that ball and continue over. So when Pedri put that ball back on his left and Rakitic just slid, right? Because they thought he was going to shoot off his left foot, slides across, and then Diego Carlos comes and steps, again, also assuming that he's probably going to at that point release, but he doesn't. He brings it back again, and then he's just completely free and creates his own shooting lane. And obviously on Twitter, of course, the name we're hearing is Messi. It's not the shot. It's not the goal that was Messi-esque to me. What was Messi-esque, if anything, was that Pedri's performances have been consistently good over the last 2 months. He's been Barca's best player. That's what's Messi-esque to me. But also the fact that he's growing in confidence, he's creating his own shooting lanes, and he's just being a difference maker. And I think that's, to me, what is most Messi-esque about what Pedri's doing recently. And no other comparisons about the way they play, the way they're set up on the field, nothing else. Just the fact that he's been Barca's best player, and in this big, important moment, he comes up big again.
Yeah, he's definitely our best player, and it also makes you think how much we missed him during the first half of the season. Regardless that I think we all agreed that the coaching change had to happen. Koeman had to leave, and we're all very happy that Xavi is the manager right now. So this is not like, oh, poor Koeman doing without Pedri, but it does raise the question, what state would our season be in if Pedri had been with us since the start of the season, because he's just so incredibly good and he influences matches just by being there. I also agree that he's been our most important player. I don't think he's not my man of the match though.
You want me to guess? You want me to guess right?
Yeah.
Match was? Boy, I think it's another midfielder. I think you're going to go with Busquets or De Jong.
No, I'm going to go with our guy Overdose, OD, Ousmane Dembele.
Totally fair, and I'd love to talk about him next. Yeah. I think if I felt like he was going to be talked about next, that's why. Yeah, I want to hear your cause, but if anything, I'm going to be able to support what you're about to say with numbers. So give me the vibes, give me the feelings.
I don't think that we've ever seen such a strong defensive performance of Dembele, where he caused so many turnovers. I think especially in the first half, there were We had a couple of breakaway situations where he did not make the most of the space that he was given when he had the ball, but he could have easily had 3 assists during the game. He crossed the ball to Frenkie de Jong, who had it over from close. He crossed the ball to Ferran Torres, who also got in a good header in the second half, and he had that through ball to Auba, which forced a save from the Sevilla goalkeeper. So he could have had more than, I'm not even sure if we're supposed to count his pass to Pedri as an assist, because Pedri had to dribble past two defenders to get a shot off, but couple his passing with just how incredibly much he influenced the game with his defense. For me, he was a clear MOTM.
Yeah, his numbers were even better than you thought. I mean, the crossing, and this was part of the strategy too. So this is one of those instances where there's crossing to cross because that's the only option Barca has. I think it was the first match against, was it Alaves, or you might remember it better than me. There was a match earlier in October or November when it seemed like Barca's only strategy was try to cross into Memphis right before we got hurt. That was the only strategy they had. And they just did it over and over and over and over again. I think it was Dest was the one crossing generally most of those in. And now you could tell that in this match, the idea was to get wide with Dembele as it is. But when Sevilla brought that second man, because it was Sevilla in a low block or a medium block, to get those crosses off as quick as possible. And that's why he delivered 15 crosses on the evening. Only 4 of them were accurate or hit a Barcelona player, but still he was able to create 7 key passes. I mean, he had 7 key passes and 2 big chances created in that match with just touching the ball 65 times. And of all the times he lost the ball, which is 23, and you and I have done this before, he lost the ball 23 times. But to me, I don't really care how many times he lost the ball because he's the focal point of the attack. He's the reason why Barca are getting things done offensively. But it was where he lost the ball. He always lost it high and wide, and Barcelona were already in their rest defense. They were already set up to press. He only once lost the ball within, I think it was 25 yards of midfield. He was generally in the final third of Sevilla before he finally lost the ball. So you're right. I think he was excellent. And actually, pointing out the defensive part of it, I thought offensively, I mean, what he was doing was pretty incredible today. He only, other than those crosses, he only misplayed 6 other passes today. And so many of those passes were supposed to be square balls or the final ball. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Dembele was excellent. And for 76,000 people, you can mention not all of them were cheering him when he came off, but I think he rightly deserved that applause. And my question for you would be, do you think the 76,000 people would have appreciated his performance less if that match had ended 0-0?
I don't know. I arrived after the names were announced. So I asked Paula, the girl who sits next to me, whether he was booed this time when his name was announced by anybody. And she's like, no, nobody at all. During the match, everybody was very appreciative of him. And I don't think there was anybody in the stadium who did not applaud him when he came off, some even standing up to do so. Whether that would have been the case if the score had still been 0-0, I don't know that Xavi would have taken him off at 0-0. So, there's that as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, as we said, the plan A was Dembele, and then plan B was something else. And because plan B worked, something else happened. Then it was all about holding on to that final result. And you could argue that, no disrespect to Nico in the last part of that match, but defensively, Dembele did a better job than Nico did in his few times on the field. Nico just didn't really jump into that match ready to go. He had a few balls where he either didn't release when he needed to, or the foul late on in the 93rd minute. So yeah, Nico had some moments, but yeah, Dembele was excellent. Even defensively, like Xavi went for this match. He set up his 11 saying, this is our best 11. And you could tell that because Sevilla were going to press a bit more than sitting in a low block. And Sevilla is one of those teams too. I want to be very clear with this, that are talented enough to not have to do what Levante does, where they play a complete low block and they all settle in, and it's a 6-4-1, right? Or whatever, yeah, 6-3-1 defending, right? And they're all settled in. But Sevilla is good enough to be in a low block and also hurt you because they have individual players like a Campos, like Martial, who are able to get out and run and cause danger. And even Rakitic, like credit to Rakitic as well for putting pressure on Busquets for so much of that match. But with Sevilla being as good as they were in, again, this pseudo low block, medium block, you weren't worried, that being Xavi wasn't worried to start Araujo over Eric Garcia. Like it wasn't like Galatasaray where you had to break through those lines. For Sevilla, they were eventually going to and want to come out of their shell with their talented players. And it is really an odd thing that Barcelona seems to, this system, be able to have a bit more success, of course, against a team like Sevilla, because eventually those talented players are going to leave that space in behind. That a team like Levante, whose only job is to, you have to stay here, stay, block, clear. that's your job. And so those spaces were opened up in behind. And so Araujo wasn't tasked to break through lines with his passing. He was able to just shuttle the ball over to Dani Alves. Dani Alves would dribble either infield to invert or just immediately get the ball to Dembele. And the combination of Alves and Dembele supporting him, Araujo was in no danger of having to worry about having to be the man to progress the ball forward or to break lines. So Xavi gets his 11, I mean, completely right, but also in the same regard, like, Levon, I don't know if you want to take any credit away from him, but like this is the 11. This is the Gala 11. This is the match you go. This is the 11 you go with to win a match nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen variations with Piqué and Eric being the center back pairing, and then Araujo on the right, which I'm also fine with. I thought Araujo was very weak on the ball today. The only passes he made, like 99% of his passes were either to Piqué or back to Ter Stegen. I don't think it was a coincidence that Xavi sent Eric Garcia out to warm up, basically as the first minute of the second half. But in the end, we were able to create enough danger, and Eric was never subbed on. But I do think that was possibly one of the weaker points of our performance tonight. Araujo on the ball. It seems that with Araujo, he has like one good match on the ball and one poor match. One good match where he does things like he does break lines, and you see him do things that he was simply not capable of 1 or 2 seasons ago. And then for every good performance, you get a performance like tonight, where all he does is lose time on the ball and play it back to Piqué, or maybe Dani Alves when Alves is close.
And to that point, I mean, I guess, again, that's kind of what I was saying, that because even with Araujo being poor on the ball, with Alves taking on the responsibility he does, with Dembele taking on the responsibility he does, and to me, I kind of want to talk about the midfield now, because Busquets, De Jong, and Pedri were all, borderline excellent. If anything, Busquets and De Jong numerically were better than Pedri was. And then, of course, Pedri scores the goal. And Pedri was fantastic as well. I just want to give you Busquets' numbers here. Busquets never lost possession. Not a single time in that match did Busquets lose possession today. Perfect 47 of 47 of his passing. Only took 54 total touches, meaning he only took 7 other touches that weren't immediately passes and moving the ball. It's pretty gross in a way. And then De Jong was 37 of 37 and only lost possession once even. And he was even touching the ball and getting touches and getting passes in that final third as he was marauding forward a bit more. And I don't know if you noticed this from the field, where you're sitting, but what was interesting to me was this chess match that happened. I think for those that thought that it was 0-0 because neither team was playing particularly well, I actually thought 0-0 was, until that goal happened, was totally fair, because both those teams I thought were really good. I think they were really holding each other well, and it was just a well played game from both sides. And what Xavi set up in the beginning was he would have Busquets high, as in defending high against that block, where knowing Sevilla was going to have a bit of the ball. That was the instruction. Well, maybe that was the instruction given, because they're starting to understand the system where Xavi's able to make changes throughout a match. It's not like when you're there for the first week or 2 or 3 weeks, you have to have gone over in training. Now they've gone over things in training enough where he can actually give instruction based on what the opposition is presenting forward. And so he had Busquets high. And then by dropping, especially in the first half of the match, by dropping Pedri and De Jong to defend, Barça has a bit more legs and speed to contend with quick movements to the center of the field. And once Sevilla would set up in Barca's half, Busquets would look to step then and man mark Rakitic, who was playing as that number 10 in behind the 2 strikers. And Rakitic then would look to do the same when Barca had the ball. It just wasn't working to the same effect because De Jong was just running so much, and nobody was tracking him at all. Juan Jordan was nowhere to be found in terms of defensively. He was just focusing everything on getting forward, but he wasn't, because those were immediately shut down by Barca's press. And that tactic, though, credit to Lopetegui, that changed a bit in the second half. They put that extra body in midfield, and then Jesus Navas was getting a bit farther forward on the right wing, which forced De Jong and Pedri both to play a bit wider, which left Busquets, in theory, a bit more exposed, which just meant that Busquets then had to be a little bit farther back and couldn't press as high. And so just all those things working in tandem, there was a moment in that game when Lopetegui and Sevilla could have broken through, and it could have been 1-0, but it wasn't. Barca held their line and they get another shutout. And now for Barca, that's 5 clean sheets in their last 7 matches. So if anything, it took a while. Then you could talk about the Pedri high miss, and then De Jong header miss, and the Torres long range miss, and the PK header miss. But Barcelona deserved a result in a really well played match to me. And tactically, again, I credit Xavi for making the right decisions and making sure that Lopetegui didn't get that last chess move to get his goal in. Instead, it was Barca who were able to counter and get that goal.